Hello students, I hope all are doing well. I hope all the students have learned the previous concept and made it thorough to their mind. Let me begin with a new concept of the same chapter, that is chapter 2, Theory of Consumer Behavior. The concept is Law of Diminishing Marginal Utility. It's a very important topic. Usually for the board exam, this law is asked for 6 marks. Let us understand what this law says. To understand this particular law, we need to ask few questions regarding this law. So which are those few questions? First question you need to ask is, this is a law related to what? Second thing you need to ask is, who gave this particular law? Third question you need to ask, who has popularized this law? Fourth one, you have to state the law as stated by the person. And fifth thing you have to include under this particular law is assumptions of this law. Then you need to explain the law with example. In order to explain the law, you need to draw a table. After drawing the table, explain the table, convert the table into a diagram, then explain the diagram, include some criticisms for this law, then conclude. This is what you have to remember to understand and to remember the law thoroughly. Let us answer these questions. The first question is, this is the law related to what? So, law of diminishing marginal utility is a law related to the laws of consumption. It is an important law related to the laws of consumption. Now, who gave this particular law? German economist Gaussen was the first person to explain this law. Therefore, it is also known as Gaussen's law. Now, the third question is, who has popularized this law? Professor Alfred Marshall, he has popularized this law. You know about Professor Alfred Marshall because you have learned something about the definitions of economics. Under that, the second definition, which belongs to the neoclassical school of thought, under that Professor Alfred Marshall comes. Professor Alfred Marshall and his team gives the neoclassical definition of economics. So he has popularized this particular law. So what he states related to this particular law? According to Alfred Marshall, the additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase of a stock of a thing diminishes, other things being equal, with the increase in the stock that he already has. So now let us understand in detail about the law. This is a statement, and while writing in the exam you have to state the law as it is, as given by Alfred Marshall. So as it is you have to write the law. Now let me explain this law. What is that additional benefit? The law begins with the sentence, the additional benefit. Already in the previous video you have learned what is marginal utility. So whatever additional benefit is explaining here is nothing but the marginal utility, which a person derives from the given increase of a stock of a thing. Means as the person increases the consumption of a thing, the marginal utility, what happens to the marginal utility? It diminishes. It diminishes. Then the law states like this, other things being equal. Now what do you mean by other things being equal? Other things, when this word is used, other things, that means there are certain assumptions. We need to assume the situation like this. So what are the assumptions that we are studying in the further explanation? So what the law states, the marginal benefit which a person derives from the consumption of a thing diminishes when other things are being equal with the increase of a stock that he already has. As he increases the consumption of a thing, the marginal utility what he derives from the additional units, that goes on diminishes. So the name itself says law of diminishing marginal utility. So what is diminishing here? Marginal utility is diminishing. Additional benefit is diminishing. The fifth element says about the assumptions. We have to write assumptions. Now let us understand what do you mean by assumptions. Assumptions means assuming something or imagining that this is the condition. So in order to work out this particular law, we need to assume these things. Which are those things we need to assume? The first thing we need to assume is, we need to think that the size of the commodity which is consumed by the consumer should be uniform. So suppose if you are consuming, if the consumer is consuming apples, then the size of each unit of apple should be uniform. It should be same. There should not be any change in the size or the taste or the price of the commodity. And the second assumption says that the consumption should be continuous. What do you mean by continuous consumption? So consumption of apple should be continuous means, if the consumer is consuming first apple, immediately the second apple should be consumed. Third apple should be consumed immediately. There should not be any time gap between the consumption of the commodity. Then the third assumption states there is no change in the price. Price should not change. Suppose if you are paying 5 rupees for an apple, same price you are paying for all the apples. No change in the price. Consumer behaves rationally means consumer should be rational. He should be a person with proper mindset. Irrational persons or abnormal persons are not suitable for this particular law. So in order to work out this particular law, or in order to understand this law, we have to assume that the consumer who is consuming the product which is uniform, he should be a rational consumer. He should be a normal consumer. Then the fifth assumption says that there should not be any change in the taste and preferences of the consumer. Consumer should have preference towards the consumption of, in our example we have taken the consumption of apples, he should have preference towards the consumption of apple only. He should not change his taste and preferences. It means first unit one apple is consuming, second unit if he consumes the orange, then this law is not applicable. So there should not be any change in the taste and preferences of the consumer. And the sixth assumption says that utility is measured in terms of numbers. We have studied already cardinal utility analysis. Cardinal utility uses or measures the utility in terms of numbers. So these are the assumptions we need to assume in order to understand the law of diminishing marginal utility clearly. Let us assume all these conditions and understand the law. Let us suppose a man is hungry and he wants to consume apples. In this condition, if he gets one apple, the utility he is getting from the first apple will be more. Let us measure that utility in terms of numbers. Let us say that he is getting the utility from the consumption of the first apple equal to 12 utiles. So utiles are the measurements used to measure the utility. Having eaten the first apple, he will not remain so hungry as before. He will consume the second apple. From the second apple, he will not get that much level of utility which he got from first apple. That means the second apple is giving lesser amount of utility even if the apple which he has consumed the exactly same as that of the first one. Let us assume that from the consumption of the second apple, he is getting utility of 6 utiles. 6 utiles. Let us understand this particular theory clearly with the help of one table. This slide, you can see the heading as schedule to understand the law. Now what is schedule? Schedule is nothing but the table. So in this particular slide, I have given a table which consists of 3 columns. First column units, second column total utility, and the third column marginal utility. So units column I have written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. Total utility I have written the numbers like this: 12, 18, 22, 24, 24, 22. The marginal utility column, you can see the values there. Now, how to understand this particular table and thereby understand the law? This table shows that when the consumer consumes the first unit of an apple, it gives him the total utility of 12. When he continues with the second apple, it gives total utility of 18. When he consumes the third apple, it gives 22 total utility. Fourth apple gives him 24 utiles of total utility. And when he consumes the fifth one, the total utility remains the same, that is 24 only. You can observe in this particular table, under this table total utility column, you observe that the total utility is increasing as the consumer increases the units of consumption. Till fourth unit, the total utility is increasing. When he consumes the fifth unit, the total utility is not increasing, instead it will remain constant, means same as that of the fourth unit of the apple. Till here it increases, then it remains constant under fifth unit. When he starts consuming the sixth unit of apple, it starts declining from 24 to it starts declining 22. It becomes 22. If we observe the marginal utility column, first unit of apple gives 12 marginal utility, second gives 6, third apple gives 4, fourth gives 2, and when he consumes the fifth apple, that time total utility remains constant, marginal utility becomes 0. That means the consumer is not getting any utility from the consumption of fifth apple. Suppose if he continues with the sixth unit of the apple, marginal utility becomes negative. You can see the negative value here, -2. What it indicates? If he continues with the consumption of sixth apple, he starts omitting. He cannot eat. He is not getting any utility at the fifth. If he still continues, he will start omitting. Therefore, negative values are shown here. So, in this table, we can see that the marginal utility column, we can observe that marginal utility is diminishing, then it becomes 0, then it becomes negative. Total utility is increasing in the initial stage till the fourth unit, then it remains constant, then it starts diminishing. Now the question is, most of the students question that how to remember these values, how to remember the table. Answer is, you need not worry much about this. You can remember this by hatting only one column. As I already stated, units column you can write anyhow. These continuous numbers 1 to 6. You have to by heart either total utility column or marginal utility column. Any one of these columns should be by hearted. If you are by hearting total utility column, then you can write the marginal utility column by using the formula which we have studied in the previous video. The formula is to find out marginal utility. MUN is equal to TUN minus TUN minus 1. Here under the second unit, TUN is 18 minus TUN minus 1, that is TUN 1 is 12. 18 minus 12 is 6. 22 minus 18 is 4. 24 minus 22 is 2. 24 minus 24 is 0. 22 minus 24 is minus 2. So if you know the total utility column, you can calculate the marginal utility and use it. If you can't remember total utility column, then you can by heart the marginal utility column. If you by heart the marginal utility column, total utility can be calculated by adding up the marginal utilities. You know that TUN is equal to MU1 plus MU2 plus MU3 plus MU4, so on. So here you can calculate the total utility by adding up these marginal utilities. 12, first 12 remains same, 12 only. Second unit 12 plus 6, 18, 18 plus 6, 4, 22, 22 plus 2, 24, 24 plus 0 is equal to 24, 24 plus minus 2 is equal to 22. In this way you can study the table and remember the table. In this slide, I have given the explanation of the table which I have already mentioned. If you want, you can take down this explanation for your reference and you can produce the same explanation in the exam also. Now, let us move on to the next stage of explaining this law, that is converting the table into a diagram. Now let us learn how to represent law of diminishing marginal utility graphically. To represent the law, we need to draw two axes, vertical axis y and horizontal axis x. On vertical axis, we are representing total utility and marginal utility, whereas on OX axis, we are representing number of units. As we have already seen in the table, there are three columns: units, total utility and marginal utility, and all these three columns are represented on these two axes. Take 1 centimeter gap here on OX axis as well as on OY axis. On OX axis, write the values of units 1, 2, 3, 4 as we can see in this column. Right. On OY axis, write the values. How to write this value? That is the question among the students. Now look at the total utility column and the marginal utility column. In that column we can see the maximum number is 24 and the minimum number is 12, whereas in the marginal utility column maximum number is 12, minimum is minus 0, 2. So we have to plot these values on OY axis. We cannot write 1, 2, 3, 4 till 24 on OY axis since the page is not sufficient to represent. Therefore, we are taking the scale. Here I am taking the scale of 4 units. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. You can stop here in the 24 also, or else if you want you can represent 28 also, no problem. So now let us represent the values in the graph. First and foremost, we have to see these two columns, that is column units column and the total utility column, as we are representing total utility curve now. So when the first unit of a commodity is consumed, the consumer gets 12 total utility. Let us represent that on the graph. First unit of the commodity is consumed, the consumer is getting 12 total utility. So I am marking here 12. So from here straight you have to see and 12 in front of 12. When the second unit of a commodity is consumed, the consumer gets 18 utilities, total utilities. So let us mark that. Second unit of the product is consumed, the consumer gets 18. Since 18 is not there represented here, we can mark it as, because mark it in between 16 and 20. So 16 and 20, 18 comes somewhere else here, 18. So let us mark it as 18 here. Second unit 18. Let us mark 18 here. When the third unit is consumed, consumer gets total utility of 22. Let us mark that. Third unit 22. 22 comes somewhere in between 20 and 24. So 22 is marked here. When the fourth unit of the commodity is consumed, consumer gets the total utility of 24. 24. Let us mark this fourth unit 24. So here it comes fourth unit 24. When the fifth unit is consumed, again the consumer's total utility remains constant, no change in the total utility. Therefore, we will mark it as fifth unit 24 only. When the sixth unit is consumed, consumer gets the total utility of 22. That means here when the sixth unit is consumed, total utility starts declining. So we can mark this here. Sixth unit is consumed, total utility of 22 here. When we join all these points, we will get a curve which is called total utility curve, TU. When we join all these points in a free hand, we will get a curve which is total utility curve. Now let us represent the marginal utility values or curve. Same way we can follow that thing. When the first unit of the product is consumed, consumer gets the total marginal utility of 12. So first 12, here only the marking comes. And when the consumer consumes the second unit of the commodity, he gets 6 marginal utility. Let us mark that 6, second unit of the commodity 6. 6 comes somewhere in between 4 and 8. So second means here 6. When the consumer consumes the third unit of the product, he gets the marginal utility of 4. So we can represent that third unit marginal utility is 4 here. When the fourth unit is consumed, marginal utility is 2. So in between 0 and 4, 2 comes. So fourth unit 2. When the fifth unit is consumed, consumer gets 0 utility. So 0 comes here. Fifth unit 0. 0 is this point. So 0. When the consumer consumes the sixth unit, he gets the marginal utility of -2. So sixth unit is consuming, he gets marginal utility of -2. 4, 0, this is the 0 point. This is the -4 point. In between 0 and -4, we will mark -2. So -2 here it comes, and sixth unit the point comes here. When we join all these points, we get marginal utility curve. Marginal utility curve. In this way, we can draw the marginal utility and total utility curves. The shape of the curve only shows that initially the total utility increases at one particular stage. It becomes constant. After that it starts falling, diminishing, falling. Marginal utility goes on, diminishes, and it becomes negative at the sixth unit of the commodities consumption. This is how we can draw the utility curves. After drawing the diagram, we will get a diagram of this type where we can see total utility curve and the marginal utility curve. You can observe in the diagram the total utility curve is upward moving till the fourth unit. After fourth unit, the line becomes straight, that shows the constant total utility. After the fifth unit, when the consumer consumes the sixth unit, the total utility curve starts declining. You can see it from the table diagram. So upward moving, remaining constant, and decreasing. If you observe the marginal utility curve, the marginal utility is diminishing, and when the consumer consumes the fifth unit of the commodity, the marginal utility becomes 0, and if the consumer continues with the sixth unit of the commodity, the marginal utility becomes negative. You can see here -2 value, -2. So negative utility. So marginal utility is going on, diminishing. Total utility is increasing in the initial stage. In the second stage it remains constant, and the third stage it starts diminishing. In this slide, I have explained the diagram in detail. You can use the same explanation for the exam also. How to write the explanation? First you need to state the axis. On OX axis what is represented, and on OY axis what is represented, you need to mention. Then you need to explain about the curves, why the total utility curve is moving upward, remaining constant, and falls down. As well as you have to mention about the marginal utility curve also, diminishing marginal utility. Now let us understand the limitations of this law. Limitations means under which condition this law is not applicable. So few conditions I would like to mention. So it includes, first condition is, it is not applicable in the case of collection of rare collections like collection of stamp, old coins, rare pictures, etc. Suppose a person is having the habit of collecting rare collections like old coins. As he collects more and more units of coins, his utility or the marginal utility goes on increases. Instead of diminishing, it goes on increases. So, for the rare collection, this law is not applicable. In the same way, it is not applicable in the case of money. If a person wants to make more money, as he gets more money, his marginal utility or the additional utility from the additional unit of the money goes on increases. So in this case also the law is not applicable. Similarly, this law is not applicable to a person who is not rational, who is not normal. You know that suppose a abnormal person consumes a particular good, marginal utility may not decrease, instead it might increase. You can take the example of a person whose appetite won't be filled even if he consumes more and more units of the apple. So for such persons or such individuals, this law is not applicable. I hope all the students have understood this particular law clearly, and this law uses the cardinal utility analysis. 6 marks. This particular question is asked usually, and sub questions like for 1 mark, what is utility? What do you mean by marginal utility? What do you mean by total utility? Formula to calculate total utility, formula to calculate marginal utility. All these questions are asked. So study in detail this law and prepare yourself for the exam. All the best, students. Thank you.